Hello everyone. Welcome back to Horror Mystery Channel. Today, we're going to explore one of the most mysterious cases in American history. A case that has gone unsolved for nearly 80 years. This is the story of Elizabeth Short, the woman known by the haunting nickname Black Dahlia. On January 15, 1947, in a vacant lot in Los Angeles, a horrifying discovery shook the entire United States. The body of a young woman was found, severed in half, with unimaginable brutal wounds. This case shocked not only because of its savagery, but also due to hundreds of clues leading to hundreds of suspects. Yet, in the end, no one was ever convicted. So who was Elizabeth Short? What happened to her in the final week of her life? And why does this case remain unsolved after nearly 8 decades? Let's start the story from Elizabeth Short's early days. Elizabeth Short was born on July 29, 1924, in Boston, Massachusetts. She was the third of 5 daughters in the family of Cleo and Phoebe Short. Elizabeth's childhood was not as peaceful as many other children's. Her father, Cleo Short, was a naval sailor who built miniature golf courses until he lost all his savings in the Great Depression of 1929. In 1930, when Elizabeth was just 6 years old, Cleo's car was found abandoned on the Charlestown Bridge. Everyone thought he had jumped into the Charles River to commit suicide. Phoebe, Elizabeth's mother, believed her husband was dead and had to work as an accountant to support her 5 daughters. But that wasn't the truth. Cleo was still alive and had abandoned the family to start a new life in California. Elizabeth grew up without a father's presence. She had many health issues, suffering from severe bronchitis and asthma. At age 15, she underwent lung surgery, and doctors advised her to live in warmer climates. So, her mother sent Elizabeth to Miami, Florida, to stay with family friends for the next 3 winters. Elizabeth's life was not normal like other girls her age. She dropped out of high school in 10th grade. Then, in 1942, a big surprise happened. In late 1942, Phoebe received an apology letter from the husband she thought was dead. It turned out Cleo was alive and living in California. In December of that year, at age 18, Elizabeth decided to leave Massachusetts for Vallejo, California, to live with the father she hadn't seen in 12 years. But the reunion didn't last. Just 1 month later, in January 1943, arguments between father and daughter forced Elizabeth to leave. She found work at Camp Cook Base near Lompoc, California, where she temporarily lived with an Air Force sergeant, who was later accused of abusing her. Elizabeth then moved to Santa Barbara, but in September 1943, she was arrested for underage drinking at a local bar. Police sent her back to Massachusetts, but Elizabeth didn't go home. Instead, she returned to Florida. In Florida, Elizabeth met a man who changed her life. Major Matthew Michael Gordon Jr., a decorated Air Force officer for his heroic missions. Gordon was training for deployment to Southeast Asia. According to what Elizabeth told friends, Gordon wrote to propose to her while recovering from a plane crash in India. Elizabeth accepted. They planned a future together, but fate didn't allow it. On August 10, 1945, Matthew Gordon died in a second plane crash. Elizabeth lost the man she loved, the man who might have become her husband. This shock likely affected Elizabeth profoundly. She became more nomadic, without clear purpose in life. In July 1946, a year after Gordon's death, Elizabeth went to Los Angeles to meet Lieutenant Joseph Gordon Fickling, an acquaintance from Florida stationed in Long Beach. In the last 6 months of her life, Elizabeth lived in Southern California, mostly in the Los Angeles area. She worked as a waitress and rented a room behind the Florentine Gardens nightclub on Hollywood Boulevard. Many described Elizabeth as a girl chasing the Hollywood dream. wanting to become a movie actress. But there is no evidence she ever landed any roles or had acting work in Los Angeles. Elizabeth's life in her final months seemed unstable. She frequently changed residences, staying with friends and acquaintances. And then, in early January 1947, everything came to an end. On January 9, 1947, Elizabeth returned to Los Angeles after a short trip to San Diego with Robert "Red" Manley, a 25-year-old married salesman she was dating. Manley told police he dropped Elizabeth off at the Biltmore Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. According to Elizabeth, she was going to meet one of her sisters, who was visiting from Boston, that afternoon. Some Biltmore Hotel staff said they saw Elizabeth using the phone in the lobby. Later, someone claimed to have seen her at the Crown Grill Cocktail Lounge on South Olive Street, about 600 meters from the Biltmore. And then, Elizabeth vanished. From January 9th to 15th, 6 days, no one knew where Elizabeth was, what she was doing, or who she met. This is called the missing week in the Black Dahlia case, and it remains one of the biggest mysteries. Many people later contacted police and the press, claiming to have seen Elizabeth that week. But police and district attorney's investigators ruled out each sighting claim one by one. In some cases, witnesses had mistaken other women for Elizabeth. What happened during those 6 days? Where was Elizabeth? Who was the last person to see her alive? These questions still have no answers. But we know one thing for sure. On the morning of January 15, 1947, the world would discover something truly horrifying. On the morning of January 15, 1947, around 10 a.m., in a vacant lot at the corner of South Norton Avenue and West 39th Street in Leimert Park, Los Angeles, a woman named Betty Bersinger was walking with her 3-year-old daughter. As she passed the lot, she saw something that looked like a discarded mannequin. But upon closer inspection, she realized the horrifying truth. It was a woman's body. And not just any body. The body was completely severed in half at the waist. The upper and lower parts were placed about 30 centimeters apart. The body had no blood left, skin pale like plaster. The face had horrific cuts from the corners of the mouth extending to the ears, creating a terrifying smile known as a Glasgow smile, a brutal form of torture. The body was posed strangely. Arms raised above the head, elbows bent at right angles, legs spread wide. There were slashes on the thighs and breasts, where sections of flesh had been completely excised. The intestines were neatly folded and placed under the buttocks. The body had clearly been washed clean by the killer. Not a drop of blood at the scene. Police found tire tracks and high-heeled shoe prints in the dirt, along with a cement sack containing diluted blood nearby. Aggie Underwood, a reporter for the Los Angeles Herald-Express, was one of the first at the scene. She took many photos of the body and surrounding area, photos that later became dark icons of this case. On January 16th, Coroner Frederick Newbar performed the autopsy. The report stated the victim was 5 feet 5 inches, 1.65 meters tall, weighed 115 pounds, 52 kilograms, had light blue eyes, brown hair, and severely decayed teeth. There were signs of binding on the ankles, wrists, and neck, a deep laceration on the right breast. The wounds showed the body was bisected using a surgical technique called hemicorporectomy, a method taught in the 1930s. The lumbar spine was severed between the second and third vertebrae. Notably, there was very little bruising along the cut line, indicating the bisection occurred after death. Another cut, 11 centimeters long, ran from the navel to the pubic area. Facial cuts were 7.5 centimeters on the right and 6.5 centimeters on the left. Cause of death was determined to be hemorrhage from facial lacerations and shock from blows to the head and face. No evidence of sexual assault, though the body showed unusual signs. But who was the victim? The victim's fingerprints were sent to the FBI. Fortunately, or unfortunately, Elizabeth's fingerprints were on file from her 1943 arrest for underage drinking. Shortly after identification, another horrific thing happened. Not from the killer, but from the press. A group of reporters from William Randolph Hearst's Los Angeles Examiner contacted Elizabeth's mother, Phoebe Short, in Boston by phone. Reporter Wayne Sutton spoke with Phoebe, while city editor Jimmy Richardson and Jim Murray sat beside him. And this is the most disgusting part. Sutton deliberately deceived Phoebe. He told her that her daughter had won a beauty contest. Phoebe, delighted and happy, began telling the reporter about Elizabeth's school achievements, her childhood, and beautiful memories. The reporter asked all sorts of questions, extracting as much personal information as possible. Only after squeezing dry information from the grieving mother did the reporters reveal the truth. Her daughter had been murdered. Jim Murray, one of the reporters present, recounted decades later that he was still horrified by it, and that the incident was etched in his memory. He recalled Sutton placing his hand over the microphone of the old-style standing phone and asking, "What do I tell her now?" Richardson narrowed his eyes and said, "Tell her now." This is a prime example of how far yellow journalism, sensational journalism, went in pursuing stories. The Examiner even offered to pay for Phoebe's plane ticket and accommodation if she came to Los Angeles to assist the investigation. But it was just another ploy. They kept her away from police and other reporters to protect their exclusive. The Examiner and Herald Express then sensationalized the case. One Examiner article described the custom black suit Elizabeth was last seen wearing as a tight skirt and a sheer blouse. The media gave her the nickname Black Dahlia and portrayed her as an adventuress who wandered Hollywood Boulevard. Other reports, like one in the Los Angeles Times on January 17th, called the murder a werewolf killing. But where did the nickname Black Dahlia come from? We'll talk about that later. First, let's discuss the investigation. On January 21st, a person claiming to be Elizabeth's killer called the office of Examiner editor James Richardson. He congratulated Richardson on the coverage and said he would eventually surrender, but not before letting police chase him a bit more. The caller also told Richardson, "Expect some souvenirs from Beth Short in the mail." 3 days later, a suspicious manila envelope was discovered, addressed to the Los Angeles Examiner and other Los Angeles newspapers. Words were cut and pasted from newspaper clippings. Additionally, a large message on the envelope read, "Here are Dahlia's belongings. Letter to follow." The envelope contained Elizabeth's birth certificate, business cards, photos, names written on paper scraps, and an address book embossed with the name Mark Hansen. The package had been carefully cleaned with gasoline, similar to Elizabeth's body, leading police to suspect it was sent directly by the killer. Despite efforts to clean it, partial fingerprints were lifted from the envelope and sent to the FBI. However, they were damaged in transit and could not be properly analyzed. On the same day the package arrived, a handbag and a black suede shoe were reported seen atop a trash can in an alley not far from Norton Avenue, 2 miles from the crime scene. The items were recovered by police, but had also been wiped with gasoline, destroying any fingerprints. On March 14th, an apparent suicide note written in pencil on scrap paper was found stuffed in a shoe in a pile of men's clothing on the beach at the foot of Breeze Avenue in Venice. It read, to whom it may concern. I have waited for the police to capture me for the Black Dahlia killing, but have not. I am too much of a coward to turn myself in, so this is the best way out. I couldn't help myself for that, or this. Sorry, Mary. But was this a real confession, or just one of hundreds of false ones? Police quickly considered Mark Hansen, owner of the address book in the package, a suspect. Hansen was a wealthy local nightclub and theater owner, and an acquaintance with whom Elizabeth had stayed with friends. Ann Toth, Elizabeth's friend and roommate, told investigators that Elizabeth had recently rejected Hansen's sexual advances, suggesting it as a potential motive. However, Hansen was cleared. Robert Manley, one of the last to see Elizabeth alive, was investigated but cleared after passing multiple lie detector tests. In total, 750 investigators from LAPD and other departments worked the case initially, including 400 sheriffs and 250 California State Patrol officers. Many locations were searched for potential evidence, including sewers across Los Angeles, abandoned buildings, and various sites along the Los Angeles River, but no additional evidence was found. Los Angeles City Councilman Lloyd G. Davis offered a $10,000 reward, equivalent to $140,820 in 2024, for information leading to Elizabeth's killer. After the reward announcement, many confessed, most deemed false by police. Some false confessors were charged with obstructing justice. In February 1947, the Los Angeles Daily News reported the case had hit a dead end, with no new leads. By spring 1947, Elizabeth's murder became a cold case, with few new clues. Sergeant Finis Brown, a lead detective, blamed the press for harming the investigation through probing details and unverified reporting. And then, the case faded into silence. The fame of Elizabeth's murder prompted a large number of confessions over the years, many considered false. In the initial investigation, police received 60 confessions, mostly from men. Since then, over 500 people have confessed, some not even born at the time of her death. LAPD Detective Sergeant John P. St. John, who worked the case until retirement, said, "It's amazing how many people have offered up a relative as the killer." Let's review some main suspects. 1. George Hodel. Perhaps the most discussed suspect in recent years. George Hodel was a wealthy Los Angeles doctor. His son, Steve Hodel, a former LAPD homicide detective, accused his father of killing Elizabeth and others. Before the Dahlia case, George Hodel was suspected but not charged in his secretary Ruth Spalding's death and accused of raping his daughter Tamar but acquitted. Hodel fled the country multiple times and lived in the Philippines from 1950 to 1990. Steve Hodel wrote books citing his father's surgical training as circumstantial evidence. In 2003, notes from a 1949 grand jury report revealed investigators bugged Hodel's home and recorded him saying to an unidentified visitor, "Supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia. They couldn't prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary because she's dead." But was this a real confession or just drunken talk? 2. Leslie Dillon. Leslie Dillon, a hotel bellhop and former mortuary assistant, is considered a key suspect by many. The 2017 book Black Dahlia Red Rose by Paiu Eatwell focuses on Dillon and associates, including Mark Hansen. Eatwell claims Elizabeth was killed because she knew too much about the men's involvement in a hotel robbery scheme. She suggests Elizabeth was killed at the Astor Motel in Los Angeles, where the owner reported one room covered in blood and feces the morning her body was found. However, LAPD Chief William A. Wharton denied any Astor Motel connection. Retired Long Beach Detective Buzz Williams said his father, part of LAPD's gang task force, believed Dillon was the killer. But Dillon was cleared after thorough investigation. 3. Walter Bailey. Surgeon Walter Bailey was proposed by former Times editor Larry Harnish. Bailey lived near the crime scene and had the surgical skill for the precise cuts. 4. Jack Anderson Wilson. In 1980, new evidence linked Jack Anderson Wilson, a prior Cleveland torso suspect, to Elizabeth's case via St. John. He claimed he was close to arresting Wilson, but Wilson died in a fire on February 4, 1982. 5. Other suspects. The list includes Norman Chandler, Times publisher; Woody Guthrie, folk singer; Bugsy Siegel, mob boss; Orson Welles, famous director; and many others. The truth is, with over 150 suspects investigated and over 500 confessions over decades, we may never know for sure who killed Elizabeth Short. Each theory has strengths and weaknesses. Each suspect has their own story. But no one was convicted. No one paid the price. So where did the nickname Black Dahlia come from? According to press reports soon after the murder, Elizabeth got Black Dahlia from staff and customers at a Long Beach drugstore in mid-1946 as a play on the film The Blue Dahlia, 1946. Other common rumors claim the media invented it because Elizabeth wore dahlia flowers in her hair. According to the official FBI website, the press gave her the nickname for her reputed penchant for sheer black clothing. However, District Attorney's investigator reports claimed the nickname was invented by reporters covering the murder. Herald Express reporter Bevo Means, who interviewed Elizabeth's acquaintances at the drugstore, is credited with first using Black Dahlia. Many rumors surrounded Elizabeth over the decades. Rumor 1. Elizabeth was a prostitute. Many acquaintances and commentators described her as a prostitute or call girl in Los Angeles. However, according to Larry Harnish, the contemporary grand jury found no evidence she was ever a prostitute. Harnish claims the rumor originated from John Gregory Dunn's 1977 novel, True Confessions. Rumor 2. Elizabeth could not have sex. A widely circulated rumor claimed Elizabeth was unable to have intercourse due to a congenital defect causing genital underdevelopment, known as infantile genitalia. However, Los Angeles County DA files state investigators questioned 3 men with whom Elizabeth had sex, including a Chicago police officer who was a suspect. The autopsy noted her uterus was small, but no other information suggested her reproductive organs were abnormal. Rumor 3. Elizabeth was a lesbian. Another rumor, that Elizabeth was lesbian, was often circulated. According to Gilmore, it started after Means was told by the deputy coroner that Elizabeth didn't have sex with men, due to her supposedly small genitalia. Means interpreted this as her having sex with women, and he and reporter Sid Hughes futilely investigated Los Angeles lesbian bars. Rumor 4. Elizabeth was tortured for hours. Many Los Angeles papers ran headlines claiming Elizabeth was tortured for hours before death. This was false, but police allowed it to circulate to hide her true cause of death, cerebral hemorrhage, from the public. Rumor 5. Elizabeth was forced to eat feces. In Severed, Gilmore claims the coroner suggested in conversation that she was forced to eat feces based on stomach contents. This was denied by Harnish and not in the official autopsy. Another frightening aspect is the possibility Elizabeth wasn't the only victim. Between 1943 and 1949, over a dozen unsolved sexually motivated murders of attractive young women occurred in Los Angeles. Authorities suspected at the time they might be the work of one unidentified serial killer. Here are some cases. July 27, 1943. Ora Elizabeth Murray, 41 years old. A golf course caretaker's son found Murray's nude body on the ground near the Fox Hills Golf Course parking lot. She had been severely beaten, and autopsy determined death by laryngeal constriction by strangulation. Last seen July 26, 1943, at a dance at the Zenda Ballroom. October 12, 1944. Georgette Bauerdorf, 20 years old. At 11 a.m., Bauerdorf's maid and janitor found her body face down in the bathtub of her West Hollywood apartment, believed attacked by a man waiting inside. John Gilmore suggested a link via both working at the Hollywood Canteen, Bauerdorf as a hostess, but claims Elizabeth worked there are disputed. February 10, 1947. Jean Nettie French, 44 years old. 3 weeks after Elizabeth, French's body was found in West Los Angeles on Grandview Boulevard, nude and brutally beaten. Lipstick writing on her abdomen read seemingly, "Fuck you, BD," with TEX below. Herald Express compared it to the Dahlia case, speculating BD for Black Dahlia. But historian John Lewis says it actually read PD, likely Police Department. March 12, 1947. Evelyn Winters, 43 years old. Winters' nude body found at 12:10 a.m. in a vacant lot at an abandoned rail yard in Norwalk along the Los Angeles River. Beaten and strangled. May 4, 1947. Dorothy Ella Montgomery, 36 years old. Found around 10:30 a.m. in an open field under a pepper tree in Florence Graham. Strangled, nude, and beaten. May 12, 1947. Laura Eliza Trelstad, 39 years old. Found by an oil company patrolman in an oil field on Long Beach Boulevard. Sexually assaulted, strangled with a belt, thrown from a moving vehicle. July 8, 1947. Rosenda Josephine Mondragon, 21 years old. Nude body found by a mail carrier in a gutter near Los Angeles City Hall. Strangled with a silk stocking. October 2, 1947. Lillian Dominguez, 15 years old. While walking home with her sister and friend in Santa Monica, a man approached and stabbed Dominguez in the heart with a stiletto knife. A week later, a note on a postcard left under a furniture store door read, "I killed the Santa Monica girl. I will kill others." February 14, 1948. Gladys Eugenia Kern, 42 years old. Los Angeles real estate agent, found stabbed in the back with a hunting knife in a vacant house she was showing in Los Feliz. Killer stole her appointment book and cleaned the weapon. June 13, 1949. Louise Margaret Springer, 35 years old. Hairdresser found murdered in her husband's convertible back seat beside a road in South Central Los Angeles. Strangled with a knotted clothesline, a stick inserted into her anus. August 18, 1949. Mimi Boomhauer, 48 years old. Last heard calling a friend from her home on Neames Road. 5 days later, her white handbag found in a phone booth at a grocery store. Never heard from again. Later declared legally dead. October 7, 1949. Jean Spangler, 26 years old. Left home saying she was meeting her ex-husband before working as an extra on a film. 2 days later, her torn purse found in a remote area of Griffith Park. Inside, a note to Kirk mentioning seeing a doctor. Were all these murders connected? Was a serial killer active in 1940s Los Angeles? Or just coincidence? We may never know. But the pattern is undeniable. Young, attractive women brutally killed, often stripped, cases unsolved. Cleveland torso murders. Some true crime authors, and Detective Peter Murillo, suspected a link between Elizabeth's murder and the Cleveland torso murders, 1934 to 1938, in Ohio. As part of investigating other murders before and after, LAPD initially studied the torso case in 1947, but dismissed links. In 1980, new evidence linked prior torso suspect Jack Anderson Wilson to Elizabeth's case via St. John. He was close to arresting Wilson, but Wilson died in a fire February 4, 1982. Chicago lipstick murders. Authors like Steve Hodel and William Rasmussen suggested a link to the 1946 murder and dismemberment of 6-year-old Suzanne Degnan in Chicago. LAPD Captain Donahoe publicly stated he believed the Black Dahlia and Chicago lipstick murder were possibly connected. Cited evidence: Elizabeth's body found on Norton Avenue, 3 blocks west of Degnan Boulevard, Degnan being the Chicago girl's surname. Also striking handwriting similarities between the Degnan ransom note and Black Dahlia Avenger notes, both mixing uppercase-lowercase, similar P shape, exact word match. Convicted serial killer William Herons served life for Degnan. Arrested at 17 for burglary near Degnan's home, he claimed police torture forced his confession, making him a scapegoat. Elizabeth Short was buried at Mountain View Cemetery in Oakland. After her youngest sister Elnora grew up and married, their mother Phoebe moved to Oakland to be near her daughter's grave. She eventually returned to the East Coast in the 1970s, living to 90 and dying in 1992. On February 2, 1947, just 2 weeks after the murder, Republican State Assemblyman C. Don Field, motivated by the case, introduced a bill for a sex offender registry. California became the first U.S. state to mandate it. Elizabeth Short's murder has been described as one of the most brutal and culturally enduring crimes in U.S. history. Time magazine listed it among the world's most famous unsolved cases. Her life and death inspired many books, TV shows, and films, both fiction and nonfiction. Among the most famous fictional accounts is James Ellroy's 1987 novel, The Black Dahlia, adapted into a 2006 film by Brian De Palma. So what really happened to Elizabeth Short? Who killed her? Why? These questions have haunted investigators, writers, filmmakers, and the public for nearly 8 decades. Perhaps we'll never know the truth. Perhaps the killer died long ago, taking the secret to the grave. Or perhaps, as some believe, the truth was covered up by powerful people protecting someone. What we know for sure is that Elizabeth Short was a real woman, not just a nickname, not just an unsolved case, not just a legend. She was a human with hopes, dreams, pain, and love. She experienced loss, suffering, and ultimately a horrific death no one deserves. With over 150 suspects investigated, over 500 confessions, thousands of pages of documents, hundreds of books and films, the Black Dahlia case remains one of the greatest mysteries in American crime history. And perhaps it will remain so forever. Thank you for watching this video about the Black Dahlia case. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel to support me in making more.